Hello. When I did part 1 of Facts About the Roman Empire, that's the title of the video, I discussed how the ancient Roman people enslaved people of different races and nationalities and waged war on them constantly. And in this video I am going to get a little bit more in depth, and I'm going to have a different topic to discuss about Roman Empire. But first, I just want to say that the Greek philosopher known as Aristotle defended slavery, and the only reason I'm mentioning Aristotle in this video is because Roman culture was derived from Greek culture, and the Greeks also kept slaves as well and performed human sacrifices. And one of the basic tenets of Roman empiric rule was that the Romans considered themselves to be the master race, and their goal was to rule the entire world. And that brings me to Mount Olympus. And in Greek culture, the Greeks considered Mount Olympus to be the home of the gods, and they referred to the gods as Olympians, and the Olympians were supposed to have made their home on Mount Olympus. And if the Olympians actually existed, they would have been of the bloodline of Nephilim, serpent, and giants, and they probably would have had what we refer to as serpentine, I guess, features. Now, I'm no expert on this, but that's just what I'm guessing about the Olympians, and I should make clear now that both the Greeks and the Romans worshipped numerous pagan gods, such as Zeus, Poseidon, Saturn, Mars, the god of war, Apollo, and Bacchus, who was the god of wine. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. When I talk about getting more in depth, I'm talking about Bacchus, Dionysus, the god of wine, and the god of Bacchanalia. And that's going to be the first topic. I'm also going to discuss the Roman festival known as Saturnalia as well. And the Roman term for their conquering of numerous other peoples was Romanization. And before Rome was founded, the people who would become Romans were the Latins and the Etruscans. And Latins and Etruscans were what we today would call white people. They were deeply, deeply pagan and deeply violent. They performed human sacrifices to their numerous pagan gods. And during the days of Roman empiric rule, brown people were enslaved and killed by the Romans in their numerous wars, and many people were also sacrificed by them as well. I'll talk more about that later, but the festival known as Bacchanalia did not first begin in Rome. And before Rome was even founded, the Greeks and the Etruscans practiced their Bacchanalia centuries earlier, and these festivals, Bacchanalia festivals, were tributes to the god of wine, Dionysus or Bacchus, and these celebrations would later involve widespread drunkenness, nakedness, as in people running around in the streets naked, having wild orgies, feasting, lots of gluttony, and human sacrifices. And in the beginning, in Rome, around the year 200 BC, the Romans only practiced Bacchanalia once a year, meaning what we'd say is once every 10 months, not 12 months. But it soon turned into 5 times a month. Pretty soon they were practicing Bacchanalia festivals 5 times a month, And women who worship Bacchus were called Bacchantes, and this is how the Bacchantes are described on a website called wisegeek.com. A Bacchante in Roman mythology is a female follower of Bacchus, god of wine and intoxication. In Greek mythology, they are called Maenads. The Bacchante is symbolic of both the ecstasy and the destructive power of the god she worships, and his major attribute wine, though she sometimes appears in modern representations. To be simply a free spirit, the Bacchante has a darker side. Bacchantes are possessed and act as if in a trance, completely abandoned to their physical natures. They are capable of ripping to shreds not only any animal that crosses their path, but humans as well. Sometimes the rite is followed by homophagia, in which Bacchantes eat the victim's remains. Quite a description. And now, if you've seen or heard about that girl, 21-year-old girl in Oregon, who, along with her boyfriend, killed a horse. And if I remember correctly, they killed the horse, then they cut it open, or ripped it open. Either they cut or ripped it open. And the girl got naked and climbed inside of the horse's body and took pictures of herself inside the horse's body, all covered in blood and guts. Now, I don't know if everyone who's seen this video has heard about it, but the picture's pretty disgusting. Yeah. So, anyhow, a lot of people wondered just what possessed her to do something like that. I've wondered the same thing, okay? But it says here, when we're talking about Bacchantes, Bacchantes are possessed and they act as if in a trance, and they are capable of ripping to shreds any animal that crosses their path. And sounds very similar to what this girl did. Ripped a horse to shreds and climbed inside of its dead body. And according to her, this was art. And I believe afterward, she ate the horse raw. Okay, the girl ate the horse raw, I believe. At least, if I remember correctly, she did. And this sort of behavior harkens back to the days of the Bacchante. And if you think that Bacchanalia festivals are a thing of the ancient past, think again. I found an article online called Bacchanalia Festival Raises Big Bucks for Charity, written in 2004. And every year since 1990, they have celebrated Bacchanalia festivals in New York. And yes, they do call them Bacchanalia festivals. It's in the article. And here's a quote: "The immediate goal of the uglies," I don't know why they call themselves that, but that's what it said. "Drink, eat, meet single women, sway to local bands. In short, get ugly." Now, the last sentence, "in short, get ugly," I read the article and I wondered what was so ugly about eating and drinking and listening to bands or talking to women, men, or whatever, which was something we've all done at some point. The article doesn't explain what is so ugly about that. So obviously that wasn't all they were doing at this Bacchanalia festival. Otherwise they wouldn't have used the word ugly. And whatever it was they were doing, you use your imagination. I mean, maybe they were killing animals and climbing inside of their bodies or something. I don't know. Who knows? The Romans first began to celebrate Bacchanalia around 200 BC and continued to celebrate it for the next few hundred years until in the year 186 AD the Roman government put a stop to Bacchanalia celebrations, nipped them in the bud forever, because they'd become too wild, too out of control. They were taking part in too many human sacrifices, other depraved and debauched activities, like the ones mentioned earlier. So, after a few hundred years, the Roman Senate just said, okay, enough is enough. No more Bacchanalia. But I do believe that after that, the Bacchanalia celebrations merely went underground and survived right up until the present day. That's what I think happened. Like a lot of these outlawed activities that we're talking about during that time period. Now, moving right along. Here I'm going to read from this book called The Romans. Start with, why were people against the Christians? And this lack of tolerance of Christian people in Rome is all the more surprising in the context of the 2nd century AD. Interest in religion was very strong in this period, particularly in the East, where oracles and prophetic cults had a large popular following. Marcus Aurelius himself, Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, you probably heard of him, but had an interest in the human-headed snake oracle, Glycon of Abonotekos, and its prophet Alexander. And it doesn't say when this happened. I don't think it's referring to Alexander the Great here. But it says he had an interest in the human-headed snake oracle. And key word here being snake, meaning it didn't actually look like a snake. It's referring to a member of the serpent bloodline. The same bloodline of probably most of these so-called gods that these people worship, pagan gods. Serpent bloodline, Nephilim, fallen angels. Take your pick. And people joined the mystery cults in large numbers and worshipped in secret ceremonies such gods as Isis, the Great Mother, and Mithras, the savior god of the East. Now I'm going to go back a few pages. Okay. A flexible empire. With few exceptions, the Romans had a deep regard for the laws and traditions of the people they controlled. Only when when an institution or a person was seen as a threat to Roman power, was it or the person removed. And it says a person, but it also could be talking about an entire group of people. It says the Druids of Britain were driven into the sea because they were seen as chief agents of revolt. Jerusalem was destroyed after a rebellion many years in the making. And there it's referring to the Jerusalem talked about in the Bible. The Jerusalem of the Hebrews of the Bible, and the Hebrews of the Bible, of course, were people of color, brown-skinned people, who ranged from being light-skinned, like me, to dark-skinned. That is who the true Hebrews of the Bible were. And people who referred to themselves as Christians during the time of the Roman Empire were persecuted and in many instances, put to death for being Christians. Why? Because the Romans were a pagan people. They did not believe in the God of the Bible, and all of them were worshippers of the sun, and sun worship is pagan in nature as well. The Roman emperor known as Constantine was a sun worshipper throughout his lifetime. The Roman Emperor Constantine, known as Constantine the Great by the Roman people during this time period because he had taken control of the entire empire. He ruled from the year 314 AD until 337 AD. And the reason why he wasn't ruling after 337 AD was because he passed away and left his rulership to his sons. After he passed away in 337, he was a sun worshipper throughout his lifetime, and probably a Saturn worshipper too. Now, the Roman celebration known as Saturnalia involved decorations like wreaths and garlands and trees covered with ornaments. You know, like you have a Christmas tree and you cover it with ornaments, and you put a star on top of it and put your little round balls, angels on the tree every year during Christmas. Well, the Romans did that during their Saturnalia festival every year too, and they preferred their tree ornaments to be colored gold because that color represented the sun. And they didn't put their trees inside the house, they left them outside where they belong. But they did cover trees with golden ornaments and a star at the top of it, gold star representing the sun. Now, the emphasis of Saturnalia was on their god Saturn, who was the god of the harvest, and fertility is in planting the crops, vegetables and fruits and wheat and grain every year. And some of the emphasis was on the god known as Sol Invictus, or Invincible Sun. It's spelled S-O-L, Invictus. And this was the Roman sun god, and like I said, the Romans weren't Christians, and they did not believe in the God of the Bible or the God of the Israelites. And so every year we celebrate Christmas on December 25th. And the Romans celebrated Saturnalia for a week, from December 17th through December 24th, I think. It's the last day of their Saturnalia celebration, so it was like a week long. And the reason they celebrated during that period was because it was the time when the winter sun began to get a little bit lower and a little bit darker during the winter solstice. Like I said, it was based on sun worship, so it would involve the changing of the sun from one stage to another. And so by celebrating Christmas each year, we who have been taught to celebrate Christmas every year are actually taking part in pagan sun and Saturn worship. And the Roman Empire was founded a few hundred years before the beginning of the AD period, and they began celebrating Saturnalia the year 217 BC, and of course it was not based on anything other than a pagan festival, kind of like the modern day Wiccans do. They have something like that. They call it well, I don't know. I don't remember. But okay, so every year during Saturnalia celebration, they would choose a sacrificial victim to be slain, and their sacrificial victim was supposed to represent Saturn, the god. And this festival was like Bacchanalia in that it involved a lot of drinking, a lot of eating, and nudity, as in caroling out in the streets naked, and of course the human sacrifice. And Saturnalia traditions were forerunners of modern day Christmas celebration. And we've all been taught that the Christmas holiday has to do with Jesus, or the God of the Bible, but plain and simple truth is that's a lie, just like a lot of the things that we've been taught to believe in, like America being discovered by Christopher Columbus. But anyway, Saturnalia and Christmas are basically the same thing. And in closing, I should probably mention the ritual, Roman pagan ritual that took place at the Grammys this year, when Nicki Minaj performed a song that was called Roman Holiday during the Grammys. And I've only seen her performance a couple of times. I'm not the biggest Nicki Minaj fan in the world. I really don't even like her that much, but I did watch her performance. She performed a song called Roman Holiday, and this might have looked like any other Grammy performance, except that her performance involved elements of Satanism, paganism, and a ritual involving a man dressed up like a Roman Catholic Pope. And that's no coincidence that he was wearing a Roman Catholic Pope costume during the performance. It's supposed to represent the fact that our culture and Roman culture are the same. And the name of the song, Roman Holiday, well, think about it. The Romans celebrated the holidays known as Saturnalia and Bacchanalia and so on and so forth, and gotta think that to this very day we continue to celebrate them, just under different names. And so basically her entire performance was based on pagan Roman traditions. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. So if you're planning on celebrating Christmas this year, you should at least know exactly what you're celebrating.